We're back by popular demand. It's Season 2 of the Wed-Cast, brought to you by Film Media Wedding Videography. Welcome to the season finale of the Wed-Cast. My name is James, and it has been a fantastic series, and today it's going to get even better because today we are talking to the one and only Dawn Rees Ceremonies. Now, Dawn is a humanist celebrant, so we're going to find out all about what a humanist celebrant is, what a humanist ceremony is as well, and we'll be talking to her all things weddings. So stay tuned for the season finale, because here we go. I'm going to bring to you Dawn Rees. Hello, Dawn, and welcome to the Wed-Cast series finale. We've saved the best till last. How are you today?
You're so kind. Hi, James. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you.
It's brilliant to have you on. I've been meaning to get you on for a little while to have a little chat about what you do, what you bring to the wedding industry. So, obviously, before we get started, you are a humanist celebrant. Have I said that correctly?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I am a humanist celebrant.
And what does that mean? What is a humanist celebrant?
What does that mean? Okay, well, there are different sorts of celebrants. So there are humanist celebrants who are trained by Humanists UK, which is a campaigning charity for equality and living life without God is the easiest way to say it.
Okay.
So it's not doctrinal. It doesn't. It's for people who want a wedding but don't want to mention a deity or a god in it, and particularly if they're aligned to sort of humanist values, which is sort of being rational, scientific, and using evidence, but living a good life and being kind.
Interesting. So, looking at it from that point of view, then obviously, a non-religious type of ceremony. That's probably the best way to describe it. What's different then between a humanist ceremony and a ceremony you may find in a church, for example?
Right. Well, first of all, it won't have religion in it, and there's nothing wrong with religion. I'm quite, some of my best friends are vicars actually,
okay.
But it doesn't have a religious element to it.
Right.
And if you have, a couple who are either humanists themselves, many people, once they understand what humanism is, actually say, well, I live like that, so am I a humanist? And I said, well, you can be if you decide to be. But the difference is that a humanist celebrant will take a ceremony, will personalise it, will make it real, make it really special, will work really closely with the couple to work out what they want. It will often include ritual and symbolism, because my own thoughts about that are that, those things, ritual and symbolism, are deeply ingrained in our history, and people look for them, and they can be really good way markers, within a ceremony to give it shape. But essentially, I perform ceremonies, weddings and naming ceremonies and vow renewals, based on a humanist way of living, if you like.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know we have worked together before at a ceremony, so I know how you work, and which is fantastic. So just at the moment, then, so the way I've been trying to do a little bit of research on humanist ceremonies. So it's not currently legal. It's not a legal ceremony in England and Wales. However, it is in Ireland, Scotland, and Jersey. Is that right?
I know. Isn't that an anomaly? And it's jolly annoying. I mentioned before that Humanists UK is a campaigning charity, and it's campaigning to make humanist ceremonies legal tender, for want of a better word. And indeed, that legislation has already been passed in Northern Ireland and in Scotland and in Jersey and in Guernsey. Right. But not in England and Wales.
Obviously, we live in a world now where people have more choice and more freedom in the way they want to express their beliefs. I think people should be entitled to, as I said, as we mentioned before, it's legal in Ireland and Scotland and Jersey and Guernsey.
Yeah.
Why can't it be legal here? And I think that's something, I think over time, hopefully, fingers crossed, that England and Wales will embrace that change too and let you guys do what you want to do here. I think, I don't know, I don't see why.
I do hope so. I hope so, mostly for couples who wish to have a legal ceremony and don't want to have two ceremonies in order to be legally married. Because of that, of course, that's what happens. And what I find is that, and I'm sure most celebrants do actually, is that the couples will go and have a register office legal ceremony, and some just leave it at that, and others want to have something that is more appropriate to them, more personal to them, where they know the celebrant that's going to take their ceremony, where they work with them, to prepare the ceremony and the content and all of those things, to have a relationship with their celebrant, which of course you don't have with a registrar. And registrars, they do their best, and in many ways they do really well with the time that they are allowed, but it is part of the county council to that provides these legal weddings through registrars. But it does mean if you want a celebrant-led ceremony, that you end up paying twice, and that's not fair either, is it? In terms of an equal opportunity, if you like. You don't want to have to pay twice.
Absolutely. So if they did make it legal, how would that change the way you work? Would it increase your workload, or would it make life harder for you or easier? How would that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the jury's out on that. I think in some ways it would make it easier, because there would be a single path to having a legal ceremony that isn't in a church, so you'd be on an equal footing with registrars. The flip side to that is, of course, that celebrants would be regulated, which they're not at the moment. There may well be restrictions on what you're allowed to do. So a good example of that is that if you have a registrar-led wedding ceremony, for example, you're not allowed alcohol on the premises and during the ceremony.
Oh, okay.
Whereas it's not unknown in my ceremonies to have a toast to the couple when they've made their vows, and so if I would imagine if celebrant-led ceremonies were legalised, there would be restrictions on what you can have. So within the ceremonies, and it may be that fees are regulated. You would need to be registered. There would be more administration. So I think there are advantages and disadvantages to the registration element, and there's no doubt that it would change some things, but that would be for the legislators, if you like, to decide what those things are.
Yeah, interesting. So as a humanist celebrant, how would so if someone was getting married in Ireland or Scotland or Jersey, for say, could they book you and would you be able to go over and do the service there for them, a legal service?
Yeah, you can do. So if somebody, if you lived, I don't know, in Edinburgh, and you rang me and said, Dawn, I really like what's on your website.
Yep.
And I feel like there'd be a really good vibe between us. I think we would really click. You seem to represent, an awful lot of things that I like, and that chime with me. Could you come to Edinburgh to do our ceremony?
Yeah.
I could, but I would actually have to register with the local authority,
right,
where that ceremony is taking place, in order that I can demonstrate that I could fulfil all the legal requirements of that particular area.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes sense. So, obviously, you're happy to travel. So, I mean, I guess you're local to the Norfolk and Suffolk area at the moment? Is that where you're based?
Yeah. I live in South Norfolk, but actually I travel all over the place.
So you can travel up to Essex
to do weddings.
Anywhere?
I go into Europe. I've been all over England. And That's just wonderful, isn't it? It's just lovely.
It's amazing when you get to go out and travel and see other venues and see other amazing places. I haven't myself done any weddings abroad. That's one thing I haven't ticked off on my bucket list. But I have obviously travelled around the UK, and it's so nice just to see what else this country has to offer in regards to venues and people.
Absolutely.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we talked about travelling abroad and travelling around the country, but obviously in Norfolk, where we are, we have got some amazing. Obviously, we've got the beautiful beaches here, like you mentioned, Southwold. We've got fantastic wedding venues, and a lot of couples that I've had over the recent years have travelled from, like up Essex Way or Cambridge and to come down to here because the venues and Norfolk's just such a lovely area, so we're very lucky in that regard.
Oh, we've got not only beautiful countryside, beautiful beaches, but beautiful forests, beautiful isolated countryside areas, but also some fantastic venues.
So I guess you sit down and you have meetings with your couples ahead of the ceremony.
Yeah. Every time.
Every time. That's
so I generally have an initial meeting by Zoom, which is one of those sort of put your finger on the pulse of me and what I do, and you decide actually whether you like me or not. Because I don't want anybody to commit to me doing the ceremony if there isn't a vibe between us. Everybody has different personalities, so I'll have an initial conversation, and then if they decide to book and let me know within a week afterward of our first sort of meeting by Zoom, then if geography allows, then we meet up, we have a good long conversation. I talk to them about what all the different options are, and of course couples come with their own ideas as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
And we take all that into account, and then I ask them for loads more information than I actually need to write a ceremony. But the most important thing is that I'm getting under the skin of who they are, so that when I take the ceremony, their guests actually recognise who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, people do learn new things about the couple that's standing in front of them in my ceremonies, but, essentially it must reflect who they are.
Yeah.
For it to be genuine. We're not putting on a show. This is something, we're doing something really serious here, but we are personalising it, so the guests, should recognise who the person that they know.
I mean,
that I'm just describing.
Yeah, what's interesting, what you're saying, obviously, about meeting up and sort of like see if there's a connection between you and the couple. Obviously, that's how I do things as well. I have a video meeting with my couples before, and I had on the series of the Wed-Cast, I had Nick Chatton, the DJ, on.
Oh, yeah,
if you know Nick. He said as well, it's when it comes to meeting couples as well. If you're booking a supplier, so if a couple's booking a supplier, you want to get to know them. If you book someone and you don't hear from them till the actual day of the wedding, then they're probably not who you want, because you want someone who can be there, who you can send ideas to. Obviously, he was talking in regards to the way he does hosting of the day.
Of course.
I don't know if you know Nick, obviously you've worked with him, I think, before. You work through the day, and that's what he does. And obviously, in regards to the way I do things, I'm with the couple all day, so it's good to know them. And obviously, with yourself, if you're putting a ceremony together for them specifically, you need to get to know that couple to understand what they want and what they need for that day.
Exactly. And as you all know, I always contact other suppliers before the day as well.
Yeah, I do that too.
Because for the photographer and the videographer in particular, I try and outline what the content is, whether we're doing anything specific within the ceremony. I don't like being a mind reader, and I don't see why, my fellow colleagues on the day shouldn't need for me to surprise them with something. I really like the idea that we all work together and we know what's coming. And so, the photographer will know, what, if I'm about to do a hand tying, or if I'm about to release a load of bubbles into the air or whatever, and so that you know what the structure is. Because then you can have a think about it, can't you, and
Absolutely.
Position yourselves, and nothing will be a surprise then.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a real team effort, and That's the bonus about picking the right suppliers for you, and the right team of suppliers who can
I
work
agree.
together and get the
Yeah.
job done. And because at the end of the day, you want the best results, and it doesn't happen very often that you put yourself to get married, or you want to have a service or a ceremony. So it's nice that if you are planning it and you're spending all the money into it and you're putting the time and effort into it, that it's right for you.
Absolutely. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know that couples really know how much work we put into their ceremony before the day. And that includes, developing a collaborative approach with other suppliers before the day.
Absolutely.
So that we're all sort of aligned. And then couples get more than the sum of the parts. It's not a jigsaw that you're piecing together. What I always ask my couples, who's your photographer, who's your videographer, is anybody in charge of the sound, what music you're going to have, is it recorded, is it live, you've got musicians playing, how's that going to work, are you engaging an event planner? So how's that going to work? How are we all going to work together? They don't need to think about how we're all going to work together.
That's our job.
But I know that if I've had conversations with the other suppliers on the day, before the day, I feel more comfortable and more relaxed.
Yeah.
And I know that my colleagues, who are in the same space are not going to be surprised by anything that I do.
No.
Because we will have just talked about it, not make heavy weather of it, but, and then I think the couple get a much better ceremony because everything is like a good dance, isn't it? All the moves are sort of, at least we know what all of our moves are going to be.
We know what's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely.
We know what's going to happen. Yeah, exactly.
So obviously you touched on a little bit the fact that you help write the ceremony. So how do you go about that? I mean, do you specifically write for each couple, or how?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every one of my ceremonies is done from scratch.
Okay. And does that take you a long process?
I write the ceremony. I don't help write the ceremony. I do write the ceremony, but I work closely with the couple, so I'll ask them about who's important in your life. Tell me about the best thing you've ever done together. Tell me the funniest thing you've ever done. What's been a disaster. What sort of music do you like? What do you like to read? What's your favourite film? If you've got children, tell me about your children. Tell me about your family and your values. How come we're here today? What's the journey been like to get to today? All of those things. I'll ask them ridiculous questions like, who empties the dishwasher? Who's the worst singer?
I love it.
all of those things.
Fab.
Sometimes I'll do it. Sometimes if the couple feel like they'd be up for it, I'll do a quiz.
Okay.
In the middle, just in terms of engaging the guests.
Yeah.
Sort of, if you go to church and you have a wedding.
Yeah.
Even if you don't particularly believe in God or have never been to church very often, you know roughly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The bride is going to come in, the bridegroom will be waiting, we'll all stand up, there'll be music, the vicar will say something, there'll be prayers, there'll be hymns, there'll be vows, there'll be signing the register, etc. If you have a celebrant-led ceremony, it might contain some of those elements, but it might contain elements that would not be in a church. You need to build all of those in, and then you have to have enough respect for the guests to know that they might be feeling uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Because even if they're not particularly turned on by a church wedding, although some people are and are very familiar with it, if you're in a celebrant-led ceremony, you haven't got a clue what's going to happen. Yeah. So it's a bit of an adventure. Part of my role as a humanist celebrant is to make people feel comfortable, to make them feel relaxed, to make them feel part of it. So in doing that, I'll often, for example, ask the couple, tell me 3 or 4 people who I can contact who are going to be at your wedding.
Yeah.
and can I contact them? Can I get a bit of a backstory? What have you shared with this couple? Maybe you've been on holiday together or whatever. And then I can find those people in amongst the guests on the day during the ceremony. I'll say, where's Michael? Michael, we spoke, didn't we? And I'm looking straight at Michael because he waved his hand.
I love that.
And then people will turn around and look at Michael and they'll think, oh, God, we know Michael. Oh, God, what's Michael going to say? And then I'll build that into the ceremony as a way of drawing the guests in so they feel part of it rather than observers.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps people relax into it. And I had a lovely ceremony. The first ceremony I ever did was over at Happy Valley in Kings Lynn.
Right.
Just outside Kings Lynn.
Yeah.
And I always ask couples before the day, is there anybody there who's not going to be happy about this ceremony not having God in it? And one of them was, I'll call him Uncle Bill, elderly gentleman, Norfolk guy. And I said, well, I'll just introduce myself to him before the ceremony. So anyway, so I did that. I arrived and got set up, and then I found Uncle Bill.
Yeah.
And I introduced myself to him and said that I was a celebrant, and he looked me up and down and he said, well, I don't agree with it. And I said, I can understand that. I said, well, I tell you what, though, this is my first ceremony, so I was sticking my neck out. I said, this is my first ceremony. I'd really love you afterwards to give me some feedback about whether it was okay, whether it could be improved. I'd really value your opinion. So we get halfway through the ceremony and the rain starts, and it's an outdoor ceremony.
Oh, no.
The rain starts, and I had a little umbrella sort of to one side, but it looked like it was going to... So I said out of the side of my mouth, can I ask Uncle Bill to come up here with his big umbrella? He's got a big golfing umbrella.
Right.
And they said, yeah, that's fine. So I just stopped the ceremony for a second, and I excused myself and I walked down to where Uncle Bill was sitting.
Yeah.
And I said, Uncle Bill, do you think you could... I wonder if I could ask you to help me. We could do with your umbrella. Would you mind coming up and just standing with us and holding the umbrella over us? And he said, yeah, Pascal, of course I will. So up he came with his big golfing umbrella, and he put it over all of us, and of course he was standing behind us, so he was right in there.
Yeah.
And he could hear everything that we were doing. And so the couple took their vows, and then I said thank you to Uncle Bill, and he went back and the rain stopped. And afterwards I went to see him, and I said, well, okay, Uncle Bill, give it to me from the hip. How was it? Do you know, Gal, he said, that didn't have God in it, but that was lovely.
Aww.
I absolutely loved it. And that, for me, was...
I love that. That's brilliant.
So heartwarming.
Yeah.
And I wasn't asking him to change his mind about his God.
No.
But I did want him to recognise that this was valid, and it was respectful, and that it was lovely. And I loved the fact that actually he then became part of it.
That's lovely.
And he was standing there right with us, so he was part of it. He played an important role there, and I loved the fact that he said, even though it didn't have God in it, it was good. Mm-hmm. And what he said was, it was all about them, and it was lovely.
That's what it's about. It's about the couple, and it's about their day. And obviously, you included a member of their family. And I had a little cry
on the way home. I thought, well done you, Uncle Bill.
Fantastic. And do you know what, though? I think you did the right thing there in regards to, what you were going to ask him. No matter if it rained or it hadn't rained, you'd have still probably asked him the same question. And you probably would have still got the same answer, to be honest.
Well, I like to think so, but actually, and I'm not implying that this was some sort of I wasn't trying to trick him
No.
or anything. It was genuinely, he had the biggest umbrella, and that, you know, he looked like he might be up for it. So just occasionally, as a celebrant, you have to take a punt, don't you?
And you have to take a risk
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
And if I hadn't had that prior conversation with the couple, I wouldn't have known that he might have been a bit reluctant to come to the party, you know. But so that's part of the preparation I do with couples, is to, you know, think really carefully about who's there and who am I speaking to, who are my audience, if you like, you know, and how can I draw people in so that they're part of this ceremony, they're not observers. I will say to guests, you know, your witnesses, every single one of you here is a witness, and we all need people who are going to back us up. That's why you're at this wedding. So now you have a role. You're not a guest, you're a witness to this couple making their promises to one another. Now you have to help them hold it together for the rest of their lives.
What I love about what you do in that regard is, although it's not a religious ceremony, you consider people's religious beliefs and you try your best to include everyone, no matter what their beliefs are, you know, and that's the best way to do it, I think.
Well, people do it in different ways. All I know is I do it my way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not religious. I don't have a faith, but I'm not evangelistic about being a humanist. I happen to be a humanist because for me it's just a way of living. Absolutely. You know, as for some Sikhs or Christians or whatever, Jewish faith, Hindus, you know, their faith is central to their lives. For me, you know, my value base is central, and scientific evidence is central to my life. It's as simple as that. It's just another way of looking at the world.
But looking at Uncle Bill, for an example, obviously he was a religious person, and no matter if he's religious or he's not religious, you included him into that ceremony and you made him feel part of it. And I think that's really,
I'm not
really
there
important.
to make a point. That's the thing, James.
Absolutely.
I'm not there to evangelise.
No.
I'm there for the couple.
Absolutely.
And to be values based, and to be, you know, try and to be genuine.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. And the thing is, with weddings, you meet people from all walks of lives, and
you certainly do.
It's amazing, you know. We're very lucky. I always say this. You're very lucky being in the wedding industry because it's such a wide scope. It's hard to describe unless you do the job, but it's hard to talk about how many different people and various things you see. It's massive, you know, and we're only a small part of that, and even seeing that small part in the area we cover and what we do, you can tell, you know, it's a magical thing either way. Do you know what I mean? Religious or not?
It is a magical thing, and I guess I know that what I do and what many other celebrants do is, you know, we provide a service, for want of a better word, to you know, to couples sometimes where life is complicated.
Absolutely.
So just a couple of weeks ago, I did a ceremony for a couple. She came from Singapore. He came from Bangalore.
Yeah.
They'd had their legal wedding a month ago, but they wanted a small private ceremony for 12 members of their family who will have met for the first time on that day.
Wow.
You know, in a very small venue. And who come from culturally come from very different places.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so one of the benefits of having a celebrant-led ceremony, whether it's an independent celebrant or a humanist celebrant, you know, is you can provide a neutral space. You know, and not have doctrine come into it, but be very respectful of where people are coming from. And, you know, as a humanist, as a celebrant, I work really hard to understand those perspectives because it's important. You know, people's culture and their beliefs are very important to them, including those who have no belief, you know, that has... you know, stands side by side with all of the other ways of looking at the world and how we got here and how we should live our lives. So, it's that was a particularly lovely ceremony. I love doing what I call fusion ceremonies. Finding a neutral space for families that might not be coming from the same values-based perspective or from the same part of the country or the same, people coming from different parts of the world, providing a place for them where we can find a neutral space to honour the relationship between this couple.
Love it.
Yeah. I mean, just this week, I've been talking to a couple in Australia.
Okay.
Who are coming over to have their ceremony over here with in her dad's back garden.
Okay.
And that that's a very long story, and it's a beautiful story, but what a privilege.
It really is.
What a privilege that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And every year, I do 20, 30 ceremonies, and every story is different.
Every wedding's different. Every time.
I know.
Every single
How lucky am I?
It's everyone's got a story, and it's amazing to be a part of it for that special day.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's exhausting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you get home from a day and you think, oh wow, and then you have to. I don't know about you, but I relive it back in my mind. Wow, this happened and that happened.
Yeah.
And it takes you a little bit of time to come down when you get home. Which is phenomenal. Yeah. The
first thing I do when I get home is I have a shower.
Yeah.
And I get obviously take my shoes off, but get into something comfortable, and after I've had a shower, then often I'll walk the dog. Because one of the things that people don't realise is, or couples and families don't realise, is that I don't stay for the after party. No. I always feel, that is their personal place for all of them to have fun. So I'll usually stay for a drink and then I'll slide off after about an hour and come home. But doing the sort of work we do, we don't have time to debrief, do we?
No, you don't.
We don't have time to wind down, and so I'm often buzzing for a couple of days after a ceremony, and I've learned over the years that it's actually quite good to keep a reflective diary. So that's something I do after each ceremony. Within a couple of days, I'll just sit down for half an hour and I'll just write a few things down. What did I love? What didn't work well? Who do I remember? What would I do differently next time? What must I remember? And one of the things I have to remember is not to crowd too many ceremonies in a year. Because you just don't, because it has a cumulative effect. So it can be emotionally exhausting. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, isn't it? Because you're doing such a happy thing.
But it can be, yeah.
But actually, it's full on, isn't it?
Absolutely. How many do you do roughly in a year then?
Oh, the year that we all came back into the world after COVID, I did 40.
Wow, that's excessive. That's a huge amount. Yeah, absolutely.
It is excessive, but people, we've had cancellations.
I know.
From, I had, well, I'm sure you did too, but, I had a couple who booked in 2018, and I ended up doing their ceremony at the back end of 2022. And you're maintaining a relationship with them all the time. You're telling them that they're not forgotten, and we finally got there. But immediately after the world opened up again, everybody was scrambling to get their dates.
And it was a weird time.
So that was a crazy year, and last year was pretty crazy as well. I did 32 last year. And this year, I've learned that I put my holidays in first.
Good plan. Do them first.
This is the time I'm going to have off.
Yep.
And then I build ceremonies in, and I've pledged that I'm not going to do any more than 20 a year tops.
I think that's good. I mean, that's for me. I had a a lot last year as well, and I was still editing videos a week before Christmas. And I was
Yeah, I
thinking,
can imagine.
and I was thinking, this is just, it was a long season last season, so this year I'm hoping to limit myself a little bit more, and obviously next year going forward, because it can consume you, which is not a bad thing, but because I love what I do, but it can consume your life, and you've still got to find some downtime for you as well. As much as you love your job and work, you have to actually have some time off for yourself too. Absolutely.
Well, you do, and also, if you're living with somebody, you need time with them. Absolutely. As well, and not time that is obsessing about the next ceremony you're doing, or the last one that you've done.
Yeah.
It takes some self-discipline, doesn't it?
It does. I'm now going to take you over to Leo. He's my son.
Okay.
He's 11 years old, so he likes to ask guests on the show a question. So these questions are coming from the mind of an 11-year-old. So I don't know I don't know what he's going to ask you. So I will hand over to Leo now. He's going to come and ask you a question, and then we will go from there. If that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, Dawn. I hope you're well. I was wondering, what's the most outrageous ceremony you've ever conducted?
Oh, Leo, what a great question. Oh, it's going to be hard to choose. Oh, can I choose two?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. Right. So probably one of the most outrageous is a ceremony I did for two guys the year before last. And they rang me and said somebody had recommended me. They lived in Hertfordshire. Somebody recommended me. Could I do their wedding on such and such a date? And I said, yes, actually, I'm free that day. I would love to. And then it turned out that they meant like that date this year, which was 6 weeks away, rather than that date the following year. And when we got that, and when I picked myself up off the floor, I made a bit of a deal with them. I said, they'd got a house up in North Norfolk, and I said, look, I'm going to come and have breakfast with you, and I'm going to explain to you what I would like to do, because now I know I've only got 6 weeks. I won't take my usual process. So to cut a very long story short, I persuaded them that I would do a 3-hour interview with them, and that will be it.
Right.
And that I would write the ceremony, and they would see it, and they could take out anything they didn't like, but I wasn't going to add anything to it. And this is about the amount of time that it takes to write a ceremony, and couples having editorial rights. I never want to put anything in there that they don't like. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, they were very happy to do that. They were risk takers. I'm always a bit of a risk taker. We had a great vibe. And on the day, on this at this beautiful venue in Hertfordshire, there was a professional MC for the day. There was a professional pianist, and there was a fabulous gospel choir. Not singing gospel and God, but actually singing in a gospel type style.
Okay.
Anyway, I arranged to meet with the gospel choir because I thought, wouldn't it be great surprise? And I knew they'd be up for it if we did something like, oh God, what do you call it when people start singing in the underground station or in a shopping mall? Flash mob.
A flash mob, yeah.
Right, so I talked to them, would they be up for doing a flash mob for the first walking in song? And they said yes, because the guests didn't know they were having this gospel choir. So I placed, with the choir leaders' support, placed the singers amongst the guests. And the guests didn't know what was happening, and neither did the couple. And the couple were announced, and in they came. The first one person stood up and started to sing, and then there were 7 of them dotted through the room.
Wow.
Producing this most fabulous sound. Then the couple came in, and they came in together with their dogs, and the dogs were part of the ceremony. So that was absolutely stunning.
I love that.
And
I love it.
Also within it, we had a little YouTube clip about what it's like to come out.
Okay.
as a gay person to your parents.
Okay.
Because that was a big story for them, and they had a YouTube. We had a YouTube clip of Ian McKellen's speech about that in the middle of the ceremony, and it was just blimmin' fabulous.
Amazing.
And then we had two more lots of gospel singing, or gospel style singing, various popular songs through the ceremony. So that was just incredible. What was incredible, one was the atmosphere, two were the singers, three was the preparation and only doing it in one draft and the couple being up for that.
That's amazing.
And the other was the surprise for the guests.
I love it. That's brilliant. And so that was your first outrage. What was your second one?
The second one was a couple who were performers. They had a theatre company based in Luton, but perform all over the country. And they were acrobats and circus performers and all sorts of things. And we had the rings were delivered by a stilt walker.
Ooh, interesting. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, no, well, I've never seen it before or since, but it seemed like a good idea, and actually it was.
Brilliant.
It was good fun. It was a festival-themed outdoor ceremony. Most of the guests came in either camper vans or in tents and teepees, what have you. There were lots of kids. I suggested the kids did face painting for the guests as they arrive, and that kept the kids amused. And then when it came to delivering the rings, instead of having the best man having them, the stilt walkers had them. So we had two stilt walkers coming in and delivering the rings, which for the audience, the guests, were all from a theatre and performance type background, and the crowd went wild. It was lovely.
Well, what I said to you earlier on, like, no two weddings or wedding ceremonies are the same.
No, everyone's different. They're all written for the couple, about the couple, first and foremost. So stories can't be repeated, can they? Absolutely, if you're doing it that way.
And you've got the nice memories of that. They have as well. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So obviously, if a couple listening to this want to book you, how do they go about booking you? How much do you charge? Do you take a deposit? How do you go about doing that? The booking process.
Right. So the easiest way to contact me is either to find me on Instagram at Dawn the Celebrant, or via my website, dawnreesceremonies.com.
Right.
Rees is REES.
Yep.
And there's a contact form on there and my number, so you can contact me. My charges for weddings start at 1,250.
Okay.
Next year they're going up to 1,350.
Yep.
If it's in the middle of the week, it's less.
Yep.
And if you want a renewal of vows, I'm just looking at my prices. It starts at 750, and I also do naming ceremonies, and they start at £600. You pay a 25% deposit.
Fab. Yep.
By backs, and I send the couple an agreement, or the family an agreement, which is in draft form, and essentially it's that agreement sets out what you can expect from me and what I need from you. Lovely. In order to deliver a good product.
Amazing.
And it also it's written in plain English, and it sets out my terms. So what the fee's going to be. If they want to pay in instalments, they can, and we will have agreed that before the agreement goes to them. And then I set out exactly when the invoice dates will be, and it also contains cancellation terms. Another thing that it contains, which is something that not a lot of people think about, is what happens if I'm ill.
Yeah, what happens? What happens if you're ill? What
happens if I'm ill? So I've had in the last 4, 5, 6, 7, nearly 8 years, I've had two instances. One, my mum died the night before a ceremony I was due to do in London.
Sorry about that.
And so clearly I couldn't do it, but I could see what way the wind was blowing, and so I arranged with another humanist celebrant in London that she would cover for me, and we had a plan, and the cut-off time was 5 o'clock the day before.
Wow.
That I would tell her one way or the other whether I was going to be there or not, and I would talk to the couple and and that was fine. And the other was 2 days before a ceremony I got COVID and clearly couldn't do it. Now what happens in Norfolk, if the ceremonies are in Norfolk, we have a group of humanist celebrants. We actually met last night. There are 13 of us in total, but the wedding celebrants amongst them, we have a deputising service. So one of my colleagues was able to do that for me.
Amazing. So it's good that you've got some backup.
You're never left in the lurch.
Absolutely.
And that, again, is a testament to what we were talking about before, which is, working collaboratively with your colleagues.
Yeah.
Really nothing beats it. Nothing beats it. And you always know that somebody's got your back. But most importantly, from the client's point of view, they're never going to be let down.
Absolutely, and that's the key.
So they sign their agreement, and if they want me to change anything, then of course I will, and I sent them another one. So the payment of the deposit plus their signature on the agreement constitutes our contract.
Yeah.
And that means then everybody knows where they stand, and everybody's read that through before, so we know what we're agreeing to. And that's how it works.
Fantastic.
That's how it works.
Well,
I think the important thing too is for couples to approach it professionally, which I try to do, to have all my systems sorted so that it comes across as very professional.
No, absolutely.
Without being I don't know, without being up myself, to put, for want of a better word.
Yep.
It means if you're clear with a couple, then they can have confidence in you to know that you've got your, all the angles covered, and that they have a say in what happens. And from that point, when we've contracted for a particular date, I only ever do one ceremony a day. I cannot stand the stress and do not wish to subject myself, let alone any couples, to doing more than one a day. No. What happens if Granny's ill? Yeah. What happens if the car breaks down? What happens if the bride doesn't turn up and her car's broken down, or whatever? Yeah. Just committing to one a day is quite sufficient. Thank you very much.
Fine. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really important. I can't remember where I was going with this now. What was I talking about?
But just going back to
trying to be straightforward with people and them understand. I know what I was going to say. This is my job. This is what I do. So people look at my fees and they say, "Well, I can get it cheaper elsewhere." And I say, yeah, but you won't get me. You won't get what I do.
Absolutely.
You might not get the processes that underpin the quality assurance of what I do. I'm a professional. I take this job seriously. I'm not giving myself away. It takes between 35 and 40 hours before I even travel to liaise with you, meet with you, talk to your friends and colleagues, do 3 drafts of your ceremony, send you information about potential readings, coaching you in writing your vows, all of those things, visiting the venue, liaising with other suppliers. This is what I do for a living. I'm not registered charity. This is what it costs. And if somebody says that they'll do it for you for £250, I suspect they will just have a template and put your name in it. You won't get, any good celebrant will not sell themselves cheap.
Absolutely.
Because to do it properly means you get a good outcome.
Well, Dawn, it's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat with you and see how you do things and and kind of get into your mindset. So it's been a real pleasure to have you on, and I really appreciate your time this evening.
Not at all, and thank you for asking me. It's been a blast. Thank you.
That's the end of Series 2 of the Wed-Cast, and it's been phenomenal, so thank you ever so much to everyone involved. Thank you to Leo for being the weekly question person of the week. I love having you on the show. I've had some brilliant guests this series, so thank you so much. I'm hoping to return for Series 3 next January in 2025. And in the meantime, guys, make sure you go back to Series 1, have a little listen, and obviously have a listen to Series 2. Really helpful guests who have told you about how they do things at weddings. So obviously if you've got a wedding coming up in the next year or two, have a little listen and go from there. Obviously, you can also book myself your videography needs. It's filmmedia.co.uk. That's filmedia.co.uk. It's been lovely to do this series again, and hopefully I'll see you all next year. And in the meantime, I'll catch you guys on the flip.